Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. So today we're going to think about the gospel a little bit, and I've got the hiccups. And unfortunately, when I get the hiccups, sometimes it lasts for several days. It's just an awesome thing. So at any rate, the gospel is Luke 21, verses 4 to 19. And so it's Jesus prophesying. He's speaking about the temple. And so people are looking and going, look at it. Isn't it beautiful? And Jesus is tear it down. Is going to be a time when there's not one stone standing on another. Absolutely nobody could have imagined that within about 3.5 decades that was going to happen, that the temple would be entirely gone. But it was. In AD 70, the temple was torn down. It's never been rebuilt. And so they still want it to be rebuilt. As I mentioned last week, one of the things that they expect Messiah to do now is to rebuild the temple. And the only question is he going to do it himself? Or is he going to be the general contractor? It's not clear how that's going to happen. Doesn't matter. They're not too concerned about that. But at any rate, so Jesus says these things, and then he also talks about what's going to happen. He talks about wars, rumors, war, earthquakes, all that stuff. And so he's speaking prophetically. But then he goes on to say, but before these things happen, you're going to be turned over to the tribunals and to governments and all this kind of stuff. But don't worry about it. Don't even bother trying to prepare your testimony in advance because it's not going to matter. I'll give you the words that you need to say. Just teach me. And it just makes me think of Moses, right? When Moses is telling God, I don't speak well. That's not my forte. God says, look, I got this. I'll give you the words to say. And Moses keeps fussing about it. And he's just not going to do it. Finally, God says, look, here's your brother Aaron. He's coming. I'll make him your mouth. Well, how much do you see Aaron actually talking? Not a lot. And when he does, it doesn't turn out too well, right? Makes a golden calf, that kind of stuff. So what do you do, right? So can God take your mouth? Can He put words in your mouth and give to you to say? And the answer is yes, He can, if you're willing to allow Him to speak through you. It happens to me all the time. I mean, I realize most of the time that I'm really not much different or better than Balaam's ass, but that I'm just willing to speak. And so sometimes when I do, God puts words in my mouth that I hadn't thought about, things that hadn't crossed my mind at all. But it's just being willing, I think, it is really the key, in being trusting that He will, because He cares, right? He cares what we say about it. And I believe that if we care and we're trying to be careful about what we say and not misrepresent Him, then I believe that He can even work through these hiccups and say something useful. I don't know that He is right now, but it's something we, I think, have to be better at, is being willing to trust Him. I think a lot of times as Christians, we worry, right? Am I going to say the right thing? And I can remember when I first started looking at apologetics kind of stuff, I can remember feeling really intimidated and thinking, well, there's no way in the world I'd ever feel comfortable doing that. But, I don't have to know everything. If you ask me a question and I don't have the answer to it, I can tell you. Let me look into that a little bit. I don't think I can answer you very well right now, but I'm absolutely certain that there is a good answer. And sometimes it's just that I don't have the time to think about it really well at that moment. And I don't want to give just some, kind of nonsense answer. In fact, it came up tonight. We had just come, we have just come home from church tonight. In fact, while I'm doing this, we went to mass and then we taught afterwards. We didn't really teach tonight though. They had a pro-life, a young couple came and speak to the our young people about pro-life issues, and teaching them how to be, how to answer objections, and to think how to think about it. And so afterwards, we ended up talking to them and then to the mother of the young woman. And she had some questions for me as somebody who was a convert to Catholicism. And she had a couple questions that I had to say, I honestly haven't looked at what you're talking about, but I'll be glad to do that. And I will absolutely get back with you. So I got her phone number and, you know, called her so I would be able to save the number, and I'll get back with her. And it's useful for me to know these things because it's probably not the only time it's going to come up. So I'll be ready the next time. But people respect you. Actually, if you say, "That's a really good question," I'm sure there's a really good answer. I just don't happen to know it at the moment, and I haven't thought about it. And so, if you'll give me a minute, give me a little bit of time, then I'll get back with you. And we should be good at that. We should not be intimidated by it. We should be able to be good at it and be able to say, "Let me do a little work," because you've asked something that I haven't given much thought to. It's not been important to me. So sometimes you can do that and get caught in an endless loop. I had a guy that just really wasn't sure whether or not the Bible we have is the Bible we ought to have. And we read 4 books together. And then after that, he said, "The next book," I said, "That's it. There is no next book." If you're not convinced that the church made the right decision, there's not a single book on earth that's going to convince you that it did. We haven't read or learned anything new about the process of reception. So I'm not going to do any more. You can read all you want, but I'm not doing this. But it was not something I honestly had ever really given much thought to. I mean, I had the classes in seminary taught us about how we got the Bible, but it was not something that I had ever questioned. And that's typically what I mean is that people will ask you questions. You think, well, it's something I've just kind of accepted on faith, but it's got to have a decent answer to it, and I'll work on it, and I'll get back with you, and then do it. Right? I mean, I'm not the Bible answer man. I don't have to be prepared for every question all the time. And then just trust the Lord that He'll lead you to the right sources and get you the right answers to these things. But it's that's the way we really need to be better at that. We need to not be on defense all the time and not be concerned or intimidated by people's questions. You can tell when somebody wants to know something and when they just want to challenge you and they have no intention of or concern for what your answer ought to be. And so you need to know who's a genuine person, who's genuinely seeking, and who's not. But other than that, just trust the Lord. The answers will be there. There's no question. The answer will be there. You'll be able to find it. And if not, just send me a direct message. Send me a message online, and I'll try and help. I'll do for you whatever I can. Um, but just don't be intimidated and be prepared and always be prepared to give an accounting of the hope that lives in you personally and talk about your relationship and what you know to be true. But but don't worry. Don't agonize about it. Don't be intimidated by it. But know that yeah, all the things Jesus prophesied did happen. They've already happened. The things that he talks about in Matthew's gospel as well. A lot of that is already realized eschatology. But there will come a time when everything ends. And we should just be found faithful about what he's been given us to do. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.